Assignment 4.1: Ethical, Legal and Health and Safety Issues in Sports and Exercise Science Research by James Boxford. So, ethical and legal. So, ethical, this is defined as what is right and wrong, and the ethics are the moral principles that govern a person's behaviour when they're conducting an activity, and the legal is working within the boundaries of the civil law. So, this is the law that the government sets out. And if you break these laws, there are consequences, and the consequences could be prison. Another consequence of breaking the law could be termination from employment. If you're terminated from an employment for breaking the law, it will be most likely that you won't be able to ever get a job somewhere else again doing testing. So, the history of ethics. So, prior to 1947, there was no form of ethical considerations when testing was being done, and the Nazis carried out many horrible tests which led to the Nuremberg Code being made. And the Nuremberg Code is made up of 10 points that define ethical conduct during medical testing. This code was made due to the gruesome tests that Nazis put prisoners through during the Second World War. And then in 1964, the World Medical Association created the Declaration of Helsinki. And the Declaration of Helsinki also defines how testing should be done and when it should be done and when appropriate. Health and safety. So the HSE are an organisation that investigates serious injuries to people when testing is going on. And all risk assessments must be done before any activity is done. This could be whether it's a medical test, whether it's a sports session in a sports hall, a swimming lesson. Every activity must have a risk assessment, regardless of whether it's a test or not. First aid must always be available at all places where testing is done. This depends whether it's going to be a first aid kit, which always should be present, and a qualified first aider should also be present as well, and first aid procedure. And the test must be terminated when the client has requested to, or there could be serious health implications if they continued. And this is called the right to withdrawal. And I'll be explaining this further on throughout the PowerPoint with a scenario. So BASES. So BASES are known as the British Association of Sport and Exercise Science, and they've set a code for all conduct that has to be done during testing, and that is in Britain only. So scenario one. So scenario one is following my BSc degree in Sports and Exercise Science. You're an intern at Brighton University, and you've been asked to do the body fat baseline test of a young male and female aspiring British gymnasts. These gymnasts are aged 10 to 16. You arrange a half-day visit and decide to measure body fat via hydrodensometry and skin fold measures. The gymnasts have given their coach a generic consent form signed by parents, giving them permission to be on the trip and do the test. When they arrive, you tell them they have to wear swimwear in the lab to firstly do the skin fold measures and to conduct the hydrodensometry in the bath. Some of the gymnasts are reluctant to do this openly in the lab, but you insist that this is necessary to be time efficient and get through the testing. As the gymnasts finish each test, you write the body fat score on the whiteboard so that the coach can take a photo of the results to take away at the end. So from the first scenario, you can see that a consent form has been done. And this is good because the participants know what they'll be doing and their parents have given them permission to be there. It's not like the coach has just rounded them up, thrown them in the bus and got there. Also, the best equipment has been used, so the hydrodensometry, and it's the most accurate way of weighing someone, and it will help the performers know their weight. And this is good because it will help them know what they need to be able to do to improve their gymnastic skills, and it can also tell them where they are best suited for in the gymnastics. However, they've been made to wear swimwear in the lab, and this is bad because they may get cold. They may also be self-conscious of themselves and might not want to be stood around getting changed. And this could be combated by the performer getting changed elsewhere before they are going in to be weighed. They could also be allowed to stand in the lab with a warm coat and tracksuit bottoms on. And this would one, stop them from feeling self-conscious, but two, it would keep them warm. And if they aren't comfortable, then they may not be reluctant to continue with the testing. The results are written on a whiteboard, and this means that anyone can see them, which is bad because somebody may become ashamed of their result. And this is known as the Data Protection Act. So the Data Protection Act is when all data has to be stored and kept away. In this scenario, the researcher has not kept this data secure, and they have exposed it for everyone to see. The coach is also taking a photo of these results, which means they aren't staying confidential, and anyone can see them if they have access to that coach's phone camera. To prevent this from happening, the researcher needs to tell them their results privately, and the results also need to be stored on a secure computer which only the researcher has their access to. This is because the performer may become offended if their result is shared, and they may become subject to bullying if their result has been shared. This could lead to serious physical harm and also psychological harm for the performer, as they may become to feel self-conscious about themselves, and could also lead to other people in the gymnastics team becoming horrible towards them. The researchers put the time needs over the needs of the performer, and this is bad because the performer should always be put first. If they haven't put the performer first, then it could be that they are no longer volunteers, which means the study isn't honest and fair. In every study, participants must be volunteers. No one should be forced to be part of a study, and that is what's laid out in the Nuremberg Code and the Declaration of Helsinki. Everybody has to be a volunteer, otherwise testing is not ethical. Risk-benefit analysis should also be done before the gymnasts arrive. And this is where you weigh out the benefit. A risk-benefit is where you weigh out the difference between the risk and the benefits. And if the benefits outweigh the risks, then the testing will be done. However, if the risks outweigh the benefits, then the testing should not carry on. And for example, in the scenario, the gymnasts would accurately know their weights, and this can help them identify where they'd be best suited for in the team. So whether they're more of a floor routine or a vault or a pommel horse sort of person. As I said, all performers must be volunteers, and no one should be forced into taking part. And then this leads on to the right to withdraw. If the performer doesn't want to continue with the testing, then they are legally allowed to say they don't want to carry on. The researcher then also legally has to oblige to this and say, yes, that's fine, you can stop now. The right to withdraw is very important because it's the performer and it's how the performer feels. If the performer feels that they are no longer able to continue carrying on with the testing, then they must say, even if they feel like they're letting someone down, because it could lead to serious injury for them, and it could also lead to serious implications upon the research. If they are told that they continue, then the research is breaking the law. And then they would also most likely lose their BASIS credentials, which means they wouldn't be able to carry out testing anymore in the future. And finally, the researcher must respect all of the performers and their decisions. So, e.g., if they decide that they get there and they don't actually want to carry out the test because they found out what they've found out that they'd be standing in the lab room somewhere and they aren't comfortable with that, then the researcher must say that is okay to be done. They must decide that that's okay and it should be done. Respect is also very important because if the research is not respectful towards the performers, they may not feel like, and they may need testing done in the future, they may not feel like they should trust that person. So the consequences to the participants are that they may become embarrassed by their results, and they may have psychological harm from others from being in a swimsuit in front of others, so they may be shamed for the way they look, and then they may not feel comfortable with this. If they're embarrassed by their result, they could also be subject to bullying. If they have psychological harm from others, they may become self-conscious about themselves and develop disorders that will affect their health physically and mentally. And if they aren't comfortable, they may have issues in the future. So the consequences to the researcher may lose their job if the child has been psychologically or physically harmed in the future. So if the child has been shamed upon their result, then the researcher could lose their job because of this. And they may also not be trusted by the coach to do any more testing for them, and this would then mean that they wouldn't be able to improve their studies, and they'd have to find a new group of people to test, and this could be an issue for them. So this is an example of consent form. It's very simple. It just says, "They'll be carrying out the following test: body fat baseline test," and it says the protocols of the test are shown below. So the going into the bath, the exhaling all of the air in your lungs, and then simply sign and date, and then that is what the parents would have to sign, because if you're under 18, you legally cannot sign a document for the testing, and the parents would have signed that to give permission. So, scenario two. With little time to spare, you offer to get them through a VO2 max treadmill incremental test. You didn't tell them. You didn't tell them that. You said it would be a VO2 max treadmill test, but you didn't tell them how long and you didn't tell them how intense it would need to be. During the test, one of the boys gives a thumb down to indicate discomfort, but you insist he continues and tell him to stop being a girl's blouse and he should be doing better than this. There is also no clip to stop the treadmill as the equipment is not up to date and hasn't been checked in 2 years. He is so tired that he slips getting off the back of the machine and twists his knee. You tell him to go run it underwater as you can't see the first aid kit. This took some time, so you reduced the warm-up for the following participants on the treadmill in a bid to get through them all, and decided to prioritise getting the better boys done first. On the day, no girls were being tested. 2 weeks later, you decide to use the data in your MSc dissertation and publish it in the university's portal that all alumni have access to. So, what's good about scenario 2 is a warm-up has been done before testing. This is good because they've hopefully prevented any injuries occurring during the VO2 max test, and a warm-up is the most crucial part of preparation before any exercise has been done. However, when the boy got injured, everyone else's warm-ups were reduced, and this is not good because if the warm-up has been reduced, then the proper preparation hasn't been done. And yeah. Oh, sorry. But the research didn't allow the clients to stop. This is not right. This is because the performer is allowed to terminate a test at any time they deem appropriate. And there may be many different reasons for terminating the test. So, for example, in this one, the performer may have been sweating and they've given the thumbs down. They've said they want to stop, and the right of withdrawal say they have to stop. So the researcher should have said, okay, yeah, that's fine. But then they also should have stopped the testing after that person fell off the back of the machine and became injured. The test should have been terminated after that due to the fact that the researcher had to look after the person who needed first aid. The researcher also hasn't explained the safety procedure for the lab that they're in, and this isn't good because if something went wrong, then the performers would need to know what to do to ensure that they're safe. So the lab safety procedures are important because there's many different things that can go wrong in a lab, especially if it's one that's used for testing. There's a lot of high-tech equipment. If something goes wrong, people need to know what to do and how to prevent himself becoming injured. If this hasn't been explained and something occurs, then the researcher is becoming liable. So the research was also rude and offensive towards the performer, and this is bad because they may not trust them to do any more testing. What they need to do is not be offensive and not be rude. They need to just, if the person wants to stop because they can't continue, they need to say, "Yep, that's fine. You can stop now. It's end of the day. It's your decision." They also didn't take the proper safety measures into account. So when the boy injured his knee, they told him to go and run it under cold water. For a twisted knee, this is not enough. He should have made sure that there was a first aid kit present and that he was able to administer the correct help. And the equipment hadn't been checked in 2 years. And this is a major violation of health and safety rules. All equipment must be continuously checked and maintained. If it is found that there is a fault with the equipment after an accident has occurred, then the researcher may face an ethical review committee. An ethical review committee is set up to prevent injuries occur, to prevent serious accidents occurring again. They also investigate what went wrong and why it went wrong. And if they deem that the researcher had neglected their performers, then they may lose their job, and they may also face a tribunal. They may also face a tribunal to face their job, a fine, or they may face jail time. If they face jail time, they'll definitely have their basis credentials revoked, and also never be allowed to continue testing ever again. That ends part 1.